Hey everybody, Small G Gay. This is a close-up of a painting called Despair by František Kavan, a decadent painter. I got a new book about decadent art, which I think is fascinating. I don't know how many of the images would be appropriate for my vlogs, because they were up to some pretty intense stuff back there in the 1800s, let me tell you. They were up to some pretty intense stuff. But I like decadent stuff. I like kind of morbid stuff sometimes. It's interesting, too, how they were quite sacrilegious. The art at that time was similar to what it is now. And I'm looking through the book, and I'm looking at some of the images, and I'm thinking about how Hitler destroyed so much art that he thought was evil. And I'm wondering if a lot of that wasn't this decadent period that was, you know, about 50 years before the Nazis. Anyway, I'm certainly not going to show anything explicit. And it was the 1800s, so even the explicit ones are kind of tasteful and beautiful. Nothing compared to what they have now, trust me. See something more offensive on MTV any day of the week. How's everybody doing? I'm off this week. I'm just watching Star Wars movies one after another, as you know from my last vlog or two. I'm just watching Star Wars movies. I'm tweeting. I'm following the news, what little you can find. I'm completely repulsed by practically everybody in the mainstream. Can someone answer me why everyone is talking about Newt Gingrich in the past tense? What is that about? They think that if they can repeat it over and over, that it'll be true. What is that all about? So, here's some exciting news on that front. Newt floated the possibility of Sarah Palin being his vice president or a member of his cabinet. And I think a lot of people are thinking energy, which would be amazing. Now, I talked to some Palinistas. You want to know something? I talked to some of the earthquake people today. They're not deluded. They're bitter. I'm sorry, you guys. You're bitter. You're really bitter. And a lot of you are still arguing the Palin talking points. And it's kind of like you need to move on. You need to move on. And think of this possibility. And they're saying, well, she should be president. Well, she's not running, but instantly she could be part of the equation if Newt gets it. And yes, he just floated the idea, but nobody else is floating the idea, and we can put pressure to him that it will be so. I think it will. I know that Newt likes Palin. He suggested that she be the vice president to McCain. He likes her very much. They are very similar politically because they're both inspired by Ronald Reagan. If Palin were to become, say, the Secretary of Energy, she would then have had a job in the national arena, in the federal government. It would mirror what happened to her in Alaska, because at first she was the energy czar, what have you, in Alaska prior to becoming governor. She is probably one of the best experts in energy in the United States today. And this would significantly raise her profile. And it would, definitely make her even more attractive as president down the line. It would give her real experience in Washington. If she were to be vice president, a lot of people are saying she should be president, not vice president. She's not running for president. She's going to be on television, by the way. I think it's on television or radio, you never know, on Monday to address the write-in campaign. So that'll be interesting. But what if she were to become vice president and one of you said, well, the only one who was vice president who was powerful was Cheney. Just imagine the Senate being presided over by Sarah Palin every day. I'd feel a lot safer. I'd feel a whole lot safer. And the thing that I like about this combination is that Newt brings the experience of having been in Washington. He knows how the city works. He knows it inside and out, and he would bring that aspect to it, that old hand aspect to it. And Palin would bring the fire. I think it's incredibly exciting to think about. We'll have to see what happens. And you never know. Maybe they've talked about it. Everything I'm talking about is conjecture. The only thing that we know for sure is that Newt is floating the idea. Imagine if they have talked. This would explain why Palin has been kind of out of it and not talking about anything. Maybe she's already talked to Newt. Who knows? It's all conjecture. And it's very important, as we learned last year, not to fantasize too much about Clinton. Ugh, I don't want to think about her in a million years. About Palin. But still, I think it's suddenly made Newt intriguing, even more intriguing than he was before. Something to think about. Speaking of Hillary Clinton, Newt cried today. Now, I know, I listened to Tammy Bruce today. Thanks for the shout-out, Tammy. I'm going to give Tammy a shout-out like she gave me a shout-out. That's from Tammy Bruce. And she was like, real, I don't want to put up with this crying man kind of business, which is okay. It's understandable. And you know something? I immediately thought of Hillary Clinton as well. Remember when Muskie cried? Most of you are far too young. That was in the 70s. He was a potential foe for Richard Nixon. And he was the strongest. He was a Democrat, and he was the strongest opposition for Nixon. But he cried in public, and people thought that he was overly emotional. And he dropped really fast, and they ended up putting in that horrible George McGovern. My God. If George McGovern had been president, he would have been the worst president ever. Thank God he didn't make it. Watergate and all, it's still better. I was a Nixon supporter in the 70s as a child. I cut my teeth on Richard Nixon. I loved the girls so much. I was so into Patricia and Julie. So anyway, what else? What else? Yes, that. Muskie, crying. Clinton, crying. Remember how Clinton cried in New Hampshire? Everyone was talking about it. She was manipulating. Well, here's the deal. Maybe Newt was manipulating. But Mitt has the women. That's the biggest supporters of Mitt Romney are the women. The men are put it this way, the men are not swayed by his manly charms unless you're Steve Politic. Mitt appeals to the women because of his beautiful hair, his aging male underwear model looks, and they like him. But suddenly with this, I saw people on Twitter saying, women saying, I also shed a tear when I think of dear old mom, Newt. I thought it was wonderful that you care so much about your mother. And then this kind of thing. I am a mother as well, and I wish my children cared for me as much as you care for yours, Mr. Gingrich. So there was that kind of element, whatever. Better than claiming you're a doctor like Michelle Bachmann or that you're the Iron Lady, whatever. I think it was probably spontaneous, too. You have to remember, in this kind of situation, he's really going through the meat grinder. So maybe it was authentic. It's so easy to be cynical these days, isn't it? What else is happening? As if that weren't enough. I talked to J.L. Thorpe tonight. He's going to be on the show again. I think everybody is standing me up for the Iowa show. I think I'm going to take callers. That's Tuesday. It's just as well, though. Can you imagine me and Steve Politic alone on a show where the Iowa results are coming in? It would be ugly. And out of respect of our friendship, I think it's important that we not test it too much during this difficult time. As to Kyle Cary Grant Raccio, who the hell knows what he's up to right now? Who the hell knows? I've spoken to him several times today, but his schedule is anybody's guess. So I'm bringing in our old favorite J.L. Thorpe again. He's not going to be able to be on the Iowa show, but he's going to be coming back a couple of appearances, possibly, in January. I still want to get Just Another Mo on the air, but you know what that's like. It's probably for the best. If he's that terrified of going on the air, there's got to be a reason. And we'll bring in Shelley for a few things here and there. I think we might put her on some special reports. I think Shelley needs to be the Chelsea Clinton of the new Small G Gay show. She could be the Chelsea Clinton of the team, of the Small G Gay news team. Ah! So anyway, there you have it. Decadence, Sarah Palin, Vice President, and the triumphant return of J.L. Thorpe. I think I've about covered it all. Small G Gay, out of time. Bye.